Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! Today I have for you a pull tab flip card. This is a regular card base like you would normally create, but we've added a fun element to the front with a little pull tab. And this probably isn't as complicated as you might think. There are a couple specific tools it's handy to have in your arsenal in order to make this card. And we'll talk about them a little more when we get there, but we'll go ahead and get started and I'll show you how to make this card. Tonight what I'm going to do is start with all the stamping, and that way I'll get that out of the way, and then I'll show you all in one fell swoop how to assemble the card step by step. So I think that'll be just a little bit easier. So to do this card tonight, I'm using two different stamp sets. I am using Happy Hedgehogs with some of our images. And then I wanted to make a birthday card, so I'm using the birthday wishes and hope each moment of your day is as special as you are from the Garden Birdhouses set. These are both photopolymer sets, so they're clear and they need a little cushion underneath just because they don't have one built in. So I use my Stampin' Pierce mat. And I'm going to start with the inside of my card. So I need a piece of basic white that is 5 1/4 by 4. And first thing I'm going to do is stamp my sentiment. All my colors tonight I'm pulling from this Designer Series paper, which is a piece of paper from our Hostess only pattern play set. There are some Hostess exclusives in the catalog that if you host a party either online or in person with your friends and you reach $150 in sales, you can select some of those items with your free credit. And this pattern play paper is fantastic. It's a 48-piece pack of paper. I love it. There's so much you can do with it. And if you don't have a demonstrator you're currently working with, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'd be happy to send you a paper catalog if you like having them in your hands. I know I do. That's my favorite thing to do, is sit down at night and just leaf through those pages time after time. Or you can visit my website and check everything out there. All right, so first up, I'm going to work on my sentiment. Real red ink, and if you're not real familiar with stamping, my best recommendation is you have to have a light touch. Now you don't want it to be too light, but you don't want to do chest compressions on your stamp. I know people laugh at me, but I say no CPR on your stamps. So tap, 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 and this is whether you're using photopolymer or the red rubber. And then I press gently, 1, 2, 3, kind of gentle but firm, if you know what I mean. And then I get a good impression. So now I wanted to add a little accent, so I have Bermuda Bay ink as well for my little butterfly. And I'm going to add my little butterfly right there. Usually I do corner to corner, but I really like how that looks. Envelope yet. So there's the inside, and now I just need to stamp for the front here and then this inside piece. So I have two squares. Let's see, this one is for the inner part of that panel. This is 1 by 5/8 of an inch square. And then this other one is 2 and 1/8 of an inch square. So these can be any color you want. They could be basic white, but I decided to go with Pool Party. I just like the look of it better with the Designer Series paper. And on the smaller one here, I'm going to stamp my little bird. And 1, 2, 3, like that. And then for the front, I kept my real red ink out just for a moment. I tend to put my ink away really quick because otherwise I stick my fingers or my elbows or something in it that I don't mean to. Now this one, I'm gonna kind of squeeze up near the top. There we go. I realized it was a little tight for space. And then along the bottom here, I'm going to put some green grass to give my hedgehogs a place to stand. So it's got this really cute grass stamp. And what I think is fun about this is you could actually use this with any number of different stamp sets. If you need a little accent for something, a little grass somewhere, this is perfect to pull out of the stamp set. All right, so there we go. And one last thing to do, I need to create my little hedgehog. Now, he would have looked a little funny stamped on Pool Party, so what I did was I have a scrap of basic white that I'm going to stamp on, and let's see. What I'm doing is I'm going to use my hedgehog builder punch to punch out my little hedgehog when I'm done. So I flip it over so I know which way my paper is going to go in, and I look to see where's the best place to put him on the paper. And I say that because I have had times where I've stamped, I haven't thought about it before I do my stamping, and I just punch it, or I stamp it any old place, and then I realize I've stamped it in the worst possible location. So just a little tip for you, it might be easier to take a look at your punch before you actually do the stamping. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but sometimes it plays a really big part. And just a little tip for you, if you happen to stamp an image and it's not quite in the right location for punching, and you need to trim it down, say smaller than really you can get your fingers on and get it in the punch, just take a Post-it note and stick it to the back, and then feed it into your punch, and that way you've got more to hold on to and kind of guide your paper around. Hopefully I haven't just confused you with that. I like to share tips and tricks though. So now I have 2 Stampin' Blends. I'm just really quickly going to color my little hedgehog. And so I'm not really doing much in the way of blending. I'm using these more like a regular marker. And I'm just going to outline so I don't run over any of those cute little details. And then come back and fill in. This is ivory that I'm using for the lighter part here. And then I got to get his little foot. Small areas, sometimes it's easier to dot. Like the tips of his toes, I kind of dot with the marker instead of try to color in one fell swoop up there. All right, so there's his little belly. Now I'm using light cinnamon cider for the rest. And what I'm going to do here, sometimes the marker caps like to stick. I'm just going to trace along the outline and then where the 2 colors meet. And then I'm just really quickly, but kind of neatly, going to come along the top where he's got these little pokey bits. So cute. I love the detail they get on this stamp. And then once I have this outline done, like that, I'm going to come back with my brush tip since I'm not doing anything really fine detail work here. And I'm just going to use the brush tip to color it in a little bit faster. I will admit most of the things I color with my blends, I don't use my brush tips, but this happens to be perfect, and you guys don't want to see me color all night anyway. So there's my little hedgehog, and now that he or she is colored in, I'm just going to bring my punch back over and line it up. Sometimes this is the trickiest part of the whole thing. Line up his nose, line up his little feet. And sometimes it's easier than others. When I'm not on camera, I can do this in about 2 seconds flat. Woo. So there we have our little hedgehog. Woo. Lost him there for a minute. Okay. Moving right along. Now, what you're really here for, to see how the card goes together. So I have a piece of cardstock. This is what I call your standard card base. It's 5.5 by 8.5, scored down the middle of the long side at 4 1/4. And I'm just going to fold on that score line already. Check and see if my edges meet or if one's longer than the other. I'm going to go ahead and glue the insert in the card. You will only need tear and tape for two very small sections of this card, but otherwise the adhesive of your choice is what you need, either liquid glue or tape runner. My Stampin' Seal will do just fine. Press that down. And next up, I have a panel of cardstock that I'm going to put on the front of the card. My edges are a little rough here. Time for a new blade on my trimmer. And a little pencil eraser would take care of that just fine. This is 3 3/4 inches by 5. Now it's up to you. I recommend go ahead and gluing this down now. You can wait until we're done the next step and then glue it together, but I find I like to go the less fuss route when I do things, and I find that it's easier to put this on now. Oh, my adhesive's trying not to behave on me here. Okay, so you will have a little bit more of a border with this piece. Next, you need a piece of designer series paper. This is 3 1/2 inches wide by 4 3/4 inches tall. So it's going to layer on top of that piece of cardstock we just glued down, but we have some steps to do before we do that. One of those essential tools I recommend for this card is something I really recommend you have in your arsenal for all sorts of card making or scrapbooking purposes. This is our classic label punch. It's just over 2 inches long, handy for so many things. So we're going to use it to create the slot for our pull tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed my designer series paper all the way into the punch till it won't go anymore, and then I'm going to center it top to bottom. And I usually just eyeball it, so you can see we've created a window here. Next, we're going to need a piece of cardstock, and I typically recommend that this matches your card base. It doesn't have to. You can be creative with colors if you want. This is 2 by 6, and you're going to need your scoring tool, whether it be your Simply scoreboard or a paper trimmer scorer. So on the 6-inch side of the paper, we're going to score once at 2 inches and then at 2 1/2. And that's all the scoring we're going to do. Here's the other essential piece you'll need, some kind of tag topper punch. This is our delightful tag topper. We have a couple in the catalog, and we've had a couple that have retired over the years. Now on the longer, you're going to have 2 panels. You have a short square here, a really skinny panel, and then past those score lines you're going to have the longer panel, a longer rectangle. So I'm going to feed that long rectangle into my tag topper punch and punch, because this is how we create that pull tab for our card. Then I'm going to flip it over and fold on the first score line here, so more in the middle. And then I'm going to open it back up and fold again on that second line. Okay? Now we have a little bit of assembly to do. You need 2 more squares of cardstock. This one is 2 1/8 inch square. This is 2 5/8 inch square. And we are going to layer those smaller pieces that I stamped on them, like so. So a little more adhesive. Whoop. Firing things all over the place tonight. So I'm just going to give these a nice border. I could obviously, if I wanted to, I could make these stamped panels a little bit longer. It depends on how much of a border you want around the edges. The important thing when you are doing this card is that you have one square that will completely cover your smaller one. That's going to come into play here in just a minute. So bring back over your long pull tab piece. So fold it again on this first score line. So you'll have a small, I think it's 1/2 inch panel here. We'll get to that in a minute. And then you've got your square. put some adhesive on your square. Whoop, fingers are sticking tonight. And then you're going to take the smaller of your squares and line it up just to the right side of your score line that you can see. So not your folded line, but the other score line here. And give that a good press. And here's where the size of your squares comes into play, because we're going to glue this in just a minute, but it's important that when we do that, it completely hides the square that's underneath. Now, here's where you need some tear and tape. You need just 2 very small pieces for this card. So we're going to put some tear and tape here on that 1/2 inch panel. And I like to use a block to give me a nice straight edge on my tape. Give that a really good burnish with your fingers so it's easier to pull up the backing on your tear and tape. And then again, we're just going to line up just to the right of that fold line, making sure that we are covering the square underneath. Can you see there how they line up? And it's pretty close. They want to line up right on the edge. So you really can't deviate from the measurements too much as far as the different sizes of squares. Next, we're going to need one more piece of tear and tape, but we're going to take our designer series paper and you're going to feed your pull tab through like so. And then before we do anything else, we're going to add one more piece of tear and tape to the back of the small square where you put your smaller stamped piece, which was another small square. And again, really burnish that. So make sure you've got it on the back of the small piece, just as far as you can to the edge. Now, you're going to want to fold this over and more or less center it in the on the designer series paper, but you also want to make sure that you have enough room to put your ribbon in your pull tab hole there. So I like to kind of keep my fingers behind both squares so that that tape doesn't accidentally stick before I want it to. And then I make sure I'm as centered as I can be, but leaving that tab hang out on the end. And then go ahead and press that down. And so if you pull gently, you'll see how that flat mechanism is going to work on your card. Now flip that over. You want to put some dimensionals on the back of these, but you have to be careful where you put them so you don't interfere with that pull tab. So I like to put one on each corner, and then I put one kind of in midway between the edge of my paper and the edge of my tab that I can see there. And then I peel the dimensional backings off and bring over that card front I put together already. And then this gets centered just like this. And now I can pull that tab and the card works as it should. A couple more dimensionals on the back of my little hedgehog. Almost out on this sheet, which means I get my scissors out and I cut them into tiny pieces. I don't waste the edges. Grab some scissors and cut them apart for your next project. And then my little hedgehog's gonna go down here walking in the grass. And I want to add just a little bling to the card, so I have some in-color gems. And I'm gonna add one up here and then a couple more over here. And then the last step is to put a pull on that little pull tab, right? So I have some Pool Party sheer ribbon. Now you can tie a bow if you want, or just a simple knot. I'm going to tie a loop. So I'm going to trim a length of ribbon. And it's easier if you open the tab. So pull on that tab gently. And then I'm going to feed my ribbon through. Now the trick is don't pull too hard when you're tying your ribbon, whether it's a bow or a little pull like this because you'll tear right through that tab, and then you'll be frustrated because you'll have to start all over again. And nobody wants to start all over again. So just gently pull that tight, and then I'm going to come back and trim some of the length off here. And then my card is complete with my little pull tab for the front. So I have some more samples to show you because this is a fun card, and you could use this for any occasion. For this pull tab, I tied a ribbon for my pull. This is the Hey Birthday Chick set. This is one of my favorites. And so when you pull the tab, you get the little dancing chicken. And then I colored with blends on the inside as well. So just a fun little happy card. And don't forget to stamp your envelope. Next up, I created a card with our Nuts and Bolts stamp set. This is a fun one, can be used for girls or boys. You make my heart go beep. This would be a cute Valentine, or any other time just to say that you love someone special. And so this one I skewed a little more girl, but I couldn't ignore the boys, and I wanted to show you that you can also change the orientation on this card. Rather than up and down, I did horizontal for this one. The only thing I changed was how I glued on these shapes. So that's the only difference. Everything else is exactly the same. And when I pull my ribbon tab, it flips open towards the top of the card. So this one's a birthday card for a little boy. And I also wanted to show you that I just folded my ribbon over and stapled it right to the end of my tag topper punch as another different way to just have something besides a bow or a regular pull. And then again, there's the inside. Now you can experiment a little bit with your shapes. However, a word of caution. This one was fussy. I had seen one done in a rectangular shape. I think it might have been a different style of card, but I wanted to try it anyway. And so this one gave me a little bit of a fit. So really stick to those square measurements or experiment a little, but be careful, because the problem I ran into here was I had the panel that I liked on the front. Trying to create something here that didn't stick out past this other rectangle was really tricky. So I did it. I had to cut down. This was actually a stitched rectangle that I had to cut the end off of. So it doesn't have the stitching on the inside, but really I'm the only one that knows about it. So just something to keep in mind there. You can play a little bit, but not go too crazy with your measurements and shapes. And on this one, I skipped the designer series paper and just used an embossing folder. That's our new Hive embossing folder. Kept the inside very simple. And then I couldn't decide if the Happy Birthday Chick was my favorite or this one. I'm really a fan of this stamp set. This is our new Wildlife Wonder stamp set. A very masculine card, obviously. And again, opening or flipping open to the top. And with the bear on the inside. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make the pull tab flap card. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post videos here typically twice a week. You can also follow me over on Facebook as The Faithful Stamper. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy crafting.